We have so many smart, awesome, cool people in our community. Probably the smartest, awesomest, and most coolest would have to be my guest in studio right now, Nick Keeling. I'm going to turn your mic on. Nick, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you here. Very impromptu. You were hitting me up. You were asking me, because it was a few months ago we talked about this parking day thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was actually telling some other people about it not too long ago, but I was like dismayed that I didn't have all the details. Thank goodness you contacted me and you're like, I want to give you details on details on details. I got what you sent me right up in front of me.
Definitely.
So from what I know, Parking Day is an annual worldwide event where artists, designers, citizens transform metered parking spots into temporary public parks. Why do they do that, Nick?
So what this is to promote how unsustainable parking spaces are, specifically metered parking spaces are inside of our urban realm. Parking spaces take up a lot of space inside of urban cities, and those spaces could be better used for things such as parks, open spaces, businesses, walkable areas, places that could benefit the urban community more, because a single car can take up a lot of space. And so Parking Day is basically where you can show how much stuff you can kind of cram into a parking space. And there's some really cool things people can put inside of these spaces. I've seen bowling alleys, I've seen yoga studios, I've seen people doing interactive art exhibits, live music. It just kind of goes on and on. People do some amazing things inside of these parking spaces. And so it's kind of become a national event. It's held on the third Friday of every September, every single year. But we decided to host ours the week after to make it even better, because there's Pygmalion Music Festival going on, and all the traffic will be walking right past our wonderful little parking spots.
Nice. So it's happening here September 22nd, 2017.
Yes. It's going to be happening at the corner of Walnut and Chester Street. So we have 5 spaces on Walnut Street outside Cafe Kopi, and we have another 5 spaces along Chester Street right outside of the city building. And so there'll be a lot of traffic, a lot of people just wandering around. It's going to be from noon till 8 p.m. that day. And so we hope to see everyone show up. And if you're interested in hosting a space, there's a lot of information I can go into about that.
Yeah, well, first let's talk about, because this isn't your first year participating in this event, right?
Nope, this is my 3rd year now.
And so how has it been in the past, and maybe how is this year going to be a little different, or are you building upon it?
So the first year I joined was when we just did a single space, and by we I mean the Student Planning Organization. We are an organization that represents the students at the University of Illinois Department of Urban and Regional Planning, and so we hosted this space. It was about one space every single year, and we hosted them near campus, but it wasn't really in the most tactical area, because a really fun part about Parking Day is that being tactical. Like if you put your space in a very heavily traveled area, a place where people will park, people will notice that space. But the spaces we were hosting, they were a pretty good location, but they could have been a lot better. And so the first year we hosted them, I kind of just learned, the basics of it. It was a single space. But then the year later, me and the president of the Student Planning Organization decided to embark on a 10-space large Parking Day event outside of Canopy Club, and that would use the streets of Goodwin and Nevada. And that was an extremely successful event. We had Planners Network, which is the local, more community-based student group in planning, and they had a few spaces. We had an interactive art exhibit from the landscape architects. We had Neutral Cycle had a space for free bike repairs, which is a wonderful space.
Oh, heck yeah.
CUCD and Vinyl was basically giving away free records there. We had someone giving away free coffee as well. And we had a miniature living room. We had just a bunch of wonderful spaces. And that showed that you can host, it basically turned into an entire street festival without closing the streets, but by only using the parking spots. And it's a really interesting tactical thing, and this is a realm called tactical urbanism, because if you take these spots away, all of a sudden we saw some drivers get mad at us almost because we took away their parking spots. But these are public parking spaces, and so as long as you feed that meter, you can do whatever you want inside these spaces, as long as they're not commercial, which is one of the big emphasis of Parking Day, is that it emphasizes sustainability and it's not to make a profit.
Awesome. So this year you're going to be outside of Kopi, right on Chester and Walnut, which you're definitely, that's very tactical location as far as my tactician skills go. And so how many spots are you taking up this year?
So we're taking up 5 spots going north of Walnut along the west side, and then the north side of Chester Street right across in the city building. And so it's kind of going to be going around that little corner right there. And so you'll definitely see us if you walk around downtown Champaign.
And so I'm looking here. It sounds like you got some meetings to get people prepared for groups that want to take up one of these spots.
Definitely.
So if someone was interested, do you have the information right off your dome on
Yes,
how
I
to
do.
get? Oh, let's hear it.
So essentially, we are taking requests right now for people who want to participate inside of Parking Day. The due date is really soon, but we can definitely make an exception for anyone. Just be sure to send an email to us if you want to participate. There's a few rules to it. So 1, you can't make a profit. Rule number 2 is that you need 3 group members per space, and one of those group members has to be at each one of these meetings that leads up to the event. And also, one group member has to be at your space at all times, either 1 or 2, I believe. And so if you're interested, we can help you out also a little bit financially. We can help you get a little starter pack, so we can get like fake grass or some chairs or things like that. And we also might be able to hook you up with electricity if you want to do something like that. We already have proposals coming into us right now, but since we only have 10 spaces, spots are very limited. And if you want to get interested, send an email to sbouiuc@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to facilitate for that.
Awesome. And so you were mentioning some of the groups, some of the organizations, some of the businesses that came and participated in the past. What type of things work out best? Like, because I haven't been, so I'm trying to picture in my mind what the setups are. Like what kind of, is it demonstrations? Is it mostly, you're talking about a bicycle repair, so that was pretty cool.
So we've already had a few proposals come in this year already. We have, of course, Neutral Cycles joining us again for a bike repair studio, which is free. So bring your bike there and get your bike fixed up for free.
Nice.
And we also have I believe it is the Planners Network are going to be hosting 2 spaces alongside with the University YMCA, and we'll be hosting and promoting their Welcome Week event. And you can figure out more about that if you just type in Welcome Week Urbana-Champaign and go through the University YMCA for that. And they'll be doing live music from noon till 8 p.m. of all different types. They have amps, they have guitars, drum sets, everything. And this will be a wonderful event. We've already got the permit submitted. The permit is completed, and so we're good to go with that event as well. And so if you want to see some live music that's similar to the Friday, I don't remember what the events are, the First Friday?
First Friday? Yeah. Live.
Very
Friday Night Live?
Yeah, Friday Night Live.
Friday Night Live.
Very similar to that, except we'll be going from noon till 8 p.m., and so there'll be a lot of different acts. So just show up around that corner outside Cafe Kopi and be sure to get some good music.
Nice.
We've also had last year we had free pots and plants painting, and so you can paint your pots and then plant some wonderful things. We've also seen yoga, and so a public yoga studio is one of those things. We saw one of the main things is, of course, making a park. So the city of Champaign will be hosting a spot, and that spot will be a small replica of what they want to do to, I believe, a small plaza area that they're turning from parking into a park. And so they're going to be building a park that kind of shows features of what they're going to be doing in their main thing, but a smaller level and a side of a parklet. And so that's the main reason at Parking Day is to make a park out of that, because that's the original idea.
Okay.
And so we're going to start with the park, and people can do parks, anything social you can think of, as long as it fits the proposal and as long as it's safe.
Well, sweet. Okay. So when you talked about how people were coming up, they were kind of PO'd that they couldn't get their parking spot. What do you hope these people, what kind of seed are you hoping to plant in the mind of the people that encounter the parking day?
So it kind of comes 2 ways. You have both the driver's reactions and you have the pedestrians' reactions. The pedestrians' reactions are usually very wonderful because people start to realize that, by taking away these parking spots, you expand the sidewalk almost. You give more space for walking because, yes, there is a sidewalk outside of Cafe Kopi and along Walnut and along Chester, but that sidewalk could certainly be bigger because sometimes you have big groups of people and sometimes you want to walk around a little bit more. And so this is a wonderful urban planning term called street dieting. And a street diet is basically where you restrict the size of the street. It slows down traffic, and which is another fun part about Parking Day, is that traffic slows down because people get curious. People want to look into these parklets and see what's going on. Why are they taking away these parking spaces? And so traffic also slows down. And this happens inside of many urban cities with very thin streets. And so traffic goes pretty fast through Walnut, enough that it makes it almost unsafe for someone to cross outside of those crosswalks. And so if we have these parks alongside the roadways, traffic slows down and you have more pedestrians engaging with the streets. Because a long time ago, streets used to be places not just for cars, but for people, for bikes, back in the day, for streetcars, horse and buggies, everything. people didn't use sidewalks back in the day about a century ago. It was a free space for everyone. But automobiles took away that urban space. And so parking day is kind of like a rebellion against that. It's saying that we can take back these things. And one of the mottos of parking day is take back the tar. Oh. And so if you turn this unsustainable tar that's where parks and where cars are, you can turn into a more sustainable thing, such as plants, or such as a place where people can gather and mingle. It's a very positive thing. Sure, the occasional car might be very mad that we're taking their spot, but we're no different than just a car parking there. Because if someone sees their parking spot taken, these are public spaces, and they see a car, they don't get that mad about that. They're just like, I'm going to find another one. Yeah. But if you see people taking your spot, it's a total different reaction. It's almost weird because if you have 20 people occupying a space, that's a lot more sustainable than just one big car where one person drove that.
Well, in another point that I just thought of as you were talking, you're speaking about people coming together and, encountering this thing together. Mm-hmm. And it also just makes me think about how much more approachable it's making these businesses as they're right there on the shop. Think about neutral cycle. A lot of people just avoid campus. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to go down there. And then if they are, they're less likely to go into the building than mm-hmm. check it out if it's just right there on the street.
Yeah.
And so is there something that kind of opens up these organizations and businesses to the community by not being trapped inside a brick and mortar facility?
Definitely. It's if you participate in parking day as a business, of course you can't make a profit, but it's a great way to show off your business. And it's a great way to show off how different your business can be. And so I've seen some wonderful business examples in other cities such as Chicago and Los Angeles. And we do a lot of research to help promote parking day at our own home field. And so doing this, businesses can have a wonderful opening. Cafe Kopi is being a wonderful person, and whoever we have for Cafe Kopi, because we're personally not going through Cafe Kopi for this, but Planners Network will be placed right outside Cafe Kopi, and Cafe Kopi thinks this is a wonderful opportunity to have more people outside of their business, mm-hmm. and this also allows businesses to thrive, because if you have more space for pedestrians outside of your business, that's a great chance for people just to be like, hey, I wonder what this business is. Because if you just drive past it, it's like a blink of the eye and the business is gone. But if you walk past it, you might see what's inside there. You might see a coffee you want or something like that. Then you'll walk in. And you also have an open space for, outdoor dining. And this is something you actually can see in a permanent parking day solution. So just go to downtown Urbana and you can see two examples. You can see the parklet, which is outside a flying machine. You can see how they have an outdoor dining area. That is what we call a permanent parklet. And so those things are where people will actually just build permanently on top of these parking spaces. And that expands their area for dining. And people always use the outdoor dining outside a flying machine, I've seen, even sometimes during the winter. And then you also have an example for bike parking outside of CUCD and Vinyl. There is a small little blue parking spot, which is just a bunch of bike racks that are in a place where cars usually park. Some people didn't really like it that much, but now people see that tons of people are parking their bikes right outside of CUCD and Vinyl, Blackbird. People who want to bike to Urbana are biking to Urbana now. And so these activated spaces are very critical to, one, helping the downtown areas of our cities, and two, helping the businesses, and three, encouraging all the pedestrian activity that we see on First Fridays in Urbana, and we see these all over in these cities that we've tried to promote. And so we're hoping that this will start a small little fire in Champaign that will soon blossom into maybe permanent parklets, or even just getting rid of the parking at all and just expanding all the sidewalks.
And it really sounds like that there will be a great environmental impact if something like this were to catch on and we were starting to use that space for things other than cars to park directly in front of the business they're trying to go to, and then, so environmental, I just thought, people have to walk down the street. They're going to walk past all these windows and stuff. And, mm-hmm. The benefits just seem to be endless.
Exactly. What's been shown inside of urban planning studies is that if you take away parking, or if you make parking more expensive, more people will prefer to walk, bike, or take buses, which are all more sustainable options than driving a car.
Yeah. And I can see, not to be ableist or anything, some people need to be as close as possible Definitely. To their building. But, you can always make that an accessible option, too, reserved for people who need it.
And parking day will be a very accessible thing for everyone. We're making sure we're not taking away any sidewalk space from anyone during this event.
Well, awesome. Cool. Well, hey, I wanted to, oh my gosh, I don't have it pulled up. Oh, I moved the window over there. Okay, never mind. Oh, it's logged into Hill's Bandcamp. Anyways, I was going to bring up Le Louvre because not only do they have a show coming up with Jarring, mm-hmm. but you're doing a bunch of stuff you've already released a tape with La Louve and Jarring.
Definitely.
And you got another tape coming out with Jarring. And are these all being released under the same Pizza FM label thingy?
So most of the tapes I'm doing right now, or I'm being contracted to do, basically,
Okay.
is that people have heard I've been doing tapes, which is like kind of one of my hobbies. Is duplication of cassette tapes, either it be noise, punk, classical, anything. And so we did under Pizza FM. Pizza FM is expanding more into doing a small label, not that big. It's comparable to other small little bedroom labels that are ran around Champaign-Urbana, and it's just me with a few cassette tape machines, and we release on Bandcamp, and we release cassette tapes as well, or CDs, or whatever we're feeling like. Records are kind of expensive, so we're kind of straying away from that for a while.
Sure.
And so we're looking to release a cassette tape for Jarring right now. Not all is 100% complete right now, but we're discussing this right with Jarring right now to release a cassette tape for Jarring's record release show, which is supposed to happen in early September. The cassette tapes we did for the Planned Parenthood show back in, I believe it was February or March, I'm not sure, they sold out, which was a wonderful success, and all profits from that went to Planned Parenthood. And we are now selling more tapes from Jarring and La Louve from that original split, and those are still for sale on Bandcamp, so feel free to pick one up, and the profits go to Planned Parenthood if those haven't sold out just yet.
And I feel like I got a little bit ahead of myself. What's Pizza FM?
Pizza FM is a local, non-commercial college radio station. We broadcast out of Allen Hall, which is a local dormitory. It's a really fun little group of kids, and we all just like to host really fun shows, either it be music, talk shows, people playing board games. It's a really fun way for people to learn how broadcasting works and everything. We're on the internet, so we aren't doing actual airwaves. We are on the internet, but that gives us the benefit of being, international. And so I've had people tune in from all over the world in my show before. And it's a great way also just to relax, take a breather, play some music. And a really fun benefit of Pizza FM is that you can meet tons of people around the music scene, because Pizza FM is a very critical part of the music scene now in Champaign-Urbana. We host shows around Champaign-Urbana. We host either they be, just your standard college party shows with a few bands, or they be actual shows. And we're journeying more into the actual show realm now with booking bands, helping out, because we could definitely see a lot more fun bands coming to Champaign-Urbana as well. And so Pizza FM is expanding more into a legit radio station every single year.
That's super cool because, growing up in Champaign-Urbana and the music scene here, there was always a little bit of a divide between the people who were from town making music and the people who were coming, just staying at the university for a couple of years making music. And I think it's really cool that Pizza FM is just like reaching out to any band, whether they're university students or not, and getting them involved with what Pizza FM's doing. That way Pizza FM is getting involved with what the community's doing. And I think the more relationship between organizations at the university and the community will just make the whole community stronger as one entity, because there really is or shouldn't be much of a separation, because the university is a huge part of the community.
Exactly. And that's one thing that we are really trying to help out this year, is because we want to see that gap kind of close. We want to see a wonderful connection between the townies and the university students. And so if you have a band, or if you have a house that you want to perhaps host bands in, please email pizzapizzafm@gmail.com. Or if you want to be a DJ, we're looking for brand new DJs for the entire semester. But you can always renew again for the next semester as well. And you do not have to be a student to be a part of Pizza FM.
Really?
Not that I know of.
Why aren't I a part of Pizza FM?
You can jump on Pizza FM. It's a wonderful organization.
What kind of shows you got? What kind of shows do you do, Nick?
So I'm going to be hosting 3 shows this semester.
Oh, goodness.
And the 3 shows will be... So I'll be doing one with my friend Rick, and Rick Lewis is the president of Pizza FM.
He's tall.
He's very tall, but he is also a wonderful person, and he's the president of our wonderful organization. We'll be doing a show, just doing some what's hip, doing what a college radio station was founded to do, play the bands that not the big radio stations will play, and then I will also be doing a show with my friend Eben, which we kind of just do whatever we want. We kind of just it's kind of just like a show where we play whatever. We've played genres ranging from soul to old jazz to modern day hip hop to punk to rock to emo, just everything we feel like. As long if we don't have a theme, we just kind of go at it, which is actually a really fun it's very energetic, eccentric perhaps. So that's really fun. And I also am going to be doing a noise show, which is kind of a genre I've gotten really into because I have a big noise cassette tape collection. And so I'll be playing nothing but tapes. Well, also me and Evan's show, it's all physical. So we play records and tapes only. Nice. And the same goes for the show I'll be doing with my cassette tapes for noise. I have a big stack of noise tapes, and I haven't listened to half of them. And so I want to do this radio show, one, so I can listen to the noise tapes, and two, so I can broadcast them to everyone.
It's a great benefit of having a show based around a certain media. It really gets you to go through that collection of said media. So if someone wanted to check out your shows, how do they find a schedule? Is there any certain times that they air?
Pizza FM has a website, and just type in Pizza FM on Google or basically that, pizzafm.org, and you'll have some information right there. And that shows the entire show schedule. We don't have a show schedule just yet, just because, all the students are getting back on campus and we're slowly getting ourselves back up to speed. But we should have a show schedule by mid-September, and you can tune in to whatever shows you got. We usually have a full nights. We have tons of shows, many different DJs and many different types of shows. And it's a wonderful range of just many different types of like what students can bring to the table.
That's awesome. And, we're talking about you producing cassettes. And would you mind if I played Mount Adams real quick off
Sure.
of the city of Seven Hills? And, this is on Bandcamp. Nick Keeling, KEELING.bandcamp.com. This is a song off of a tape that Nick gave me not too long ago. I love it. I love to throw it on a rainy day and like do some work or answer emails, something like that. So I hope you enjoy. Mount Adams by my guest in studio, Nick Keeling. Thanks for being here today, Nick. Thanks for giving me your time, making my WEFT show a better show altogether. So you made that song that we just listened to. You want to kind of talk about your process there?
Definitely. That was my first album called The City of Seven Hills. It's about the city of Cincinnati, which is where I'm from. It's 7 hills, and so I included 7 hills. There's 7 different songs named after the hills, and it is a recording done by only cassette tape that was done entirely on a broken cassette tape recorder that I have that only records on the left ear. So when I had to produce the album, I had to put it on, make it stereo because it would be terrible if it was left ear only. But it was done only on one cassette tape recorder and a few tapes. It is piano improv, which is what it's been my instrument I've played since I've been like 3. And it's also field recordings. And I did the field recordings around the city of Cincinnati too. And so I paired field recordings with piano overlaid through that. And that was basically my first album. And between each song is a audio something between either it be an old song or something like that that kind of like provides an introduction to each thing. It's been doing pretty well. My whole tactic with that tape has been pretty interesting. I've learned a lot about cassette tapes since then. I was just getting cassette tapes my freshman year when I released this album, And it's a fun little topic. I learned that I could take cassette tapes and I could put a piece of tape over this little hole on the top of the cassette tape, and you can record over it, no matter like if it's a actual like finished cassette tape of say like something by Van Halen or something. You can write over that and make it your own thing. And I thought that was so cool because cassette tapes are so cheap. That means I can just take so many tapes I can get for free, basically, because no one wants tapes. At least at the time, no one wanted tapes. And I could just take all these tapes and just release my music on cassette tape. And I thought this was a wonderful like way of just being like, hey, cassettes are slowly coming back into the realm of people's like discographies. And this would be a great way to release my music on. And so I took recycled cassette tapes. Well, the actual album was done on brand new recording tapes, but I released the album on recycled cassette tapes, and I did this method called a shop drop method.
What's that?
Which is where you take cassette tapes and you just go to record stores and you just drop them off in random places around the store, and people discover them when they dig through the collections. And the whole purpose is because I don't really want to make a profit off these tapes because I'm recycling them, and I don't know if there's any legal problems with that. And so
Sure.
I've only sold them for free so far, and so the price tag on Bandcamp only covers my shipping cost.
Okay.
Because the tape is free, and the tape is usually not the best quality because it's recorded over some, either it be some Goodwill tapes I found or something I found off of Craigslist. People have gotten around to just donating me like tons of tapes that are just, some of them are actually pretty cool tapes. I don't write over the ones I respect, but some tapes are just, not good. Like just trash tapes that people will throw away. And so I write over those tapes and I give it new album art. I give it a outside sleeve, and I've totally changed up all my methods. I've learned a lot about screen printing, methods of art, methods of putting on sting on tape. And so I've amassed multiple tape recorders now, and I layer them up together to make an entire tape duplication process where I can make 8 tapes at the same time, recording from a master.
Okay.
Which is a lot more efficient than just one tape machine going at the same speed, and then you have to flip it over. If you do 8 of them, you can get 8 tapes out in an hour, which is a very quick speed. And so I'm able to pump out tons of these shop drop tapes or tapes I sell on my Bandcamp. After that, I released an album called Martha, which is the similar theme, which is no field recordings in Martha. It is actually just piano improv alongside a story, which I found on an audiobook on an audio cassette tape, actually. It was actually a VHS tape I found that I took the audio from. And it's all about the last passenger pigeon, which is the first recorded extinction of any animal by human hands. And so the passenger pigeon, which numbered in the billions back in the 1800s, was overhunted, and they vanished by 1914, and the last one died in Cincinnati Zoo, and her name was Martha. And so I named it after Martha, and then the next one, yeah. That's a fun little fact of human history
beautiful.
That we don't know much about Martha.
It's like beautifully sad and disturbing. I mean, it's cool that it came back to Cincinnati too.
Yeah, it's almost, Martha's story is a very sad story, but also a very wonderful story because the passenger pigeons were a beautiful animal. Yeah. And so it's a very interesting story learning about the significance they had on basically the entire North America, because people would say there are so many of them, if they flew over it would turn dark.
Yeah.
It was just such a dense amount of them that it would just blot out the sun, and you couldn't see anything for a while because there's so many of them. And there's not any mentions of them really in modern day history.
It's true.
If you just research the passenger pigeon, it's a very interesting creature that we just completely wiped away.
We're such jerks.
Oh, yeah.
So then you had this another album, Black Diamond Eulogy.
Black Diamond Eulogy was a mixture of 2 methods that I wanted to do. I really like the idea of storytelling by tape and storytelling by music, basically. And I like music. I like the whole topic of albums and how they can tell a story from song to song. And so I found these tapes. These were books on tape. I realized that before I was dubbing on just, tapes that people were giving me. Each one's a different length, and that really turned into a pain in the butt when some would end too early before the album's over, and some would take 50 minutes on one side.
Yeah.
And so I found out that audiobooks on cassette tape, super cheap, like $1 from Goodwill, and they come in packs of like 20 basically, and each one is about 100 minutes long. Okay. Each tape is 100 minutes long. And I was like, I bet I can make an album 100 minutes long, 50 minutes on both sides. And the topic I found, which is something I dedicate my studies to, is Midwestern cities and post-industrial cities, which means that the industry is no longer there. So cities include places like Detroit, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Buffalo, all the big ones that lost all their industry, their steel, Pittsburgh, they lost all their industry. And this is a huge topic I like to discuss and a huge topic I like to research, especially because I am a amateur historian when it comes to these things. And I just love to dig into old accounts and how this dealt with people. And this has really shaped my studies as an urban planner, especially since I have a lot of family history in the steel mills and the paper mills, everything around from when it comes to industrial Ohio. And so the topic of this tape was the Rust Belt. And so side A is what I call the industrial heartland, and side B is Rust Belt. And every single song is named after a city, and the method was very similar to the city of Seven Hills, where I would do a field recording overlaid with piano. And so some of these field recordings were done in Detroit. Some of these field recordings were done in Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, Huntington, West Virginia. One was done in Windsor, Ontario.
Wow.
And because I have an argument, a lot of people like to talk about the Rust Belt as an American issue. But if you cross into Windsor and you cross into that little panhandle of Ontario that stretches outside of Detroit, you'll notice that the audio industry does not stop at the Detroit River. The audio industry continues on, and there's a lot of cross travel between Detroit and the auto industry in Windsor. And Windsor's been experiencing a lot of loss of industry, a lot of problems with their industry, and so has all the way deeper in Ontario near Toronto, a town called Hamilton, which is a very large city in Ontario. That's a very steel-driven, industrial-driven town. And so my argument is that the Rust Belt is not just an American thing, it's a Canadian thing as well. And now the Rust Belt, we're seeing, is expanding beyond into what they call the Coal Belt. And so there was this one website I found a long time ago called Coal Camp USA. And it's just this one guy who goes around and takes photos of just any industry before it gets demolished. And he includes a little inlet, and he usually discusses the unions, the just lost pieces of history that he captures literally days before they get demolished. And so I was really into this website my sophomore year. He hasn't really updated it since then, but it is probably one of the best archives of Rust Belt, post-industrial, industrial heartland, and coal camps inside of the United States. It's a wonderful account of all these things. It's almost eerie how well he documents all these things. And so this almost was a tribute to his website, because I used his website and all the research he has done to help fuel my tapes. And so I released the cassette tape on recycled books on tape. It is 50 minutes on one side, 50 minutes on the other side. And to make that less daunting, because that's a very long album, you can use it as background music, or I release it as a box set, which includes a few other knickknacks inside of it, like railroad spikes. A box set is like, I believe it's $8 or $10. It includes a railroad spike. It includes a booklet, and the booklet is actually a story about each city that the track is. And so the booklet is 48 pages, I think, and every single page is a different city that I included on the album. And it's a little blurb about the city's industry, where it went, where it's at now. And it's the general theme is it's not the happiest of albums, I have to admit, but side A follows a theme of older accounts. And so side A has a lot of audio recordings, a lot of things that push a more historical account, so say pre-1970s. And then the Rust Belt side, which is side B, includes nothing but mostly just modern day stories of decay, falling apart. But this is another reason why I made this album, is to show that there is hundreds, thousands, millions of stories hidden in these cities, because we left these cities. We abandoned these cities after industry left. People went to the West Coast, the East Coast, the big cities of Chicago. People left. They went to the new Sun Belt, which is down south, to find new industry. And we abandoned our cities. We abandoned the Youngstowns, the Huntington, West Virginias, the Hintons, the Portsmouth, Ohio, all these places. And they've all seen these problems emerge because of we're abandoning these cities. But we're now rediscovering these cities for reasons such as cheap housing. We're discovering that these cities are home to beautiful buildings. These cities are very walkable because they're built around, some of them are very walkable, some of them aren't, because some were built right before the automobile, some were built after the automobile. And it's a wonderful thing when I see my cities that I was born and raised in, cities that often people would mock. People are moving back to them because people are realizing that there truly is something beautiful about these cities. But it's not all romantic about that, because there's a lot of problems with these cities too. There's a lot of problems with racial, class, gender, tons of problems that I like to study with my degree. And I hope to, that was one of my main intents with this album, is not to over romanticize these cities. There is a romantic edge to these cities that a lot of people like to romanticize old abandoned buildings. But a lot of people don't remember that there was a lot of problems with these buildings. There's a reasons why the unions existed. There's so many people lost jobs, and a lot of these cities are struggling now. Either they be with poverty, people who are just homeless looking for food, people who are very addicted to drugs and amphetamines. These are big issues in the Midwest now that we need to conquer. But a good thing is to learn about the history that these cities came from, and especially learn from our problems, because these cities wouldn't be falling apart if it wasn't for these problems that happened back in the day.
So this album is really an onion, because there's so many layers of just intent, because I'm sure that there's some artistic intent involved, but then there's also historical context being, through the box set. And it also seems like you're really trying to advocate for these cities and towns that a lot of people seem to have forgotten about. Did you ever think that you would be using your music? You've been playing piano since you were 3. Did you ever think that you would be using that to not only inform but also to advocate as you entertain?
No,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
I played piano under an instructor who is probably one of the most influential people in my life. But I just played at recitals, one recital a year, didn't really think much about it. I learned that I was good at improvisation underneath this instructor, but I played things like the Bach and Debussy and all these things, and I got pretty good at it. I competed in piano, but I never thought I would get much use out of piano, even though my instructor always told me that I would get some use out of it. I've never had the intent, and I still don't really have the intent to pursue music as a career. But it's always been a fun side project, and I like how I can draw comparisons between my intent of a career as an urban planner and my passion for music. And this is a great way of combining them, because I find the topic of writing a book or being an academic very scary, and I feel as if people will immediately see my argument and then find tons of flaws in it, and that scares me. And so I think with my music, it's an easier way to find access to a larger audience, which is a great platform, which is what music and things like poetry, performance art, which this is art in general, and art in general can provide. Art is political, and this album is political. There's a lot of ways you can look at this album, but my intent is just to provide the facts. And so everything in this album, from the things that are written inside of this to the historical accounts that I recorded, these are all things that happened.
And so we've been talking about cassettes all the way up till this, and but your last project I see was released also on 8-track, Scarfer?
Yes.
So what's Scarfer?
As a joke 2 years ago, one of my friends said, "Why don't you just start using 8-tracks because you're using cassettes?" And I was like, what are 8-tracks? And I discovered a few 8-tracks, and I was like, this is a fun little medium. This is there's so many reasons why 8-tracks aren't used. They're a terrible medium. They don't sound good. They're very easy to break. You can't rewind. You can only fast forward. And if you miss a song, you'll have to jump through programs. But there's a lot of weird hidden benefits in 8-tracks that were never capitalized upon, because they only existed from 1970 to like maybe the mid-70s when the cassette tape started taking off. So you might find an 8-track player at old stores, but most 8-track players are found in, say, old cars from this early 70s. And I just thought this was a really cool thing. Never really thought much about it. And then I was like, I should actually look into these 8-tracks, because I really like the topic of tapes, and 8-tracks are even cheaper than cassette tapes sometimes, because people just they think they're like floppy disks. They're basically like garbage now. And I dug into the topic of 8-tracks, and I learned that 8-tracks are actually very interesting things. I started experimenting with them. I learned that 8-tracks use the same exact tape, or the same exact tape width, as professional reel-to-reel recordings. And reel-to-reel players cost thousands of dollars. They're still used in professional music recording. But I realized that 8-tracks use the same width. And I realized that with 8-tracks, I can take the tape out and I can put them in loops. Because an 8-track tape naturally already is a loop. And so when there's a little metal strip that comes across the sensor, it will basically bring the head down to program 2. They call an 8-track an 8-track because there's 8 different four different programs, but they're stereo. So there's technically eight audio lines on this that the head will read. And so there's 8 of them. There's 4 programs, and there's a little metal strip. So once the loop goes around once, the metal strip will drop, and it'll go to the next program. Then go back to 4, then it just goes. It's an infinite loop, which could be helpful for some places such as department stores that just play their boring music on loop all the time. 8 tracks are very beneficial there. But I was very interested in just how I can take an 8-track, make a 5-second long loop, and also because my hands are a little big, and it was really, I heard people always making cassette tape loops for like ambient and drone and noise, and I was like, why can't I just use 8 tracks? They're bigger. It provides four loops with an 8-track tape. I can loop it 4 times, and it was a wonderful discovery to be able to loop this thing 4 times. And I was like, that's 4 loops, and it's a lot easier to make a tape loop out of this. And then I was like, why don't I take the tapes and go from one machine to the other and then make a loop that connects one machine to the next?
Why not?
And then I decided, why don't I just keep on expanding one? And so I did one machine that records audio, and that transports the tape to the next tape machine. And that tape machine goes to another tape machine. And then all these tape machines are put together on a mixer. And some of the tape sounds will come back into the recorder, which makes an infinite loop that will continue to layer over sounds. And so I released an album called Scarfer that uses this technique, where I play a piano into a microphone. And you'll hear this thing called tape decay, which is a very fun topic. And it uses the topic of Frippertronics. Frippertronics was developed by Robert Fripp.
You just made that up.
Oh, no, I didn't make that up. Frippertronics is done
Frippertronics,
done by Robert Fripp, I believe of Joy Division, but I can't remember. Probably got that wrong.
I don't know anything about music.
Robert Fripp invented a method where you hook up 2 reel-to-reel players, and you play into one, and it plays back on the next one, so you can play in harmony with yourself after 5 seconds of delay. And this is also the topic of tape delays. This is how tape delays became a thing, and this is how we have things such as modern-day reverb. And I decided, I'm going to make a budget version of this with 8-track tapes.
8 tracks.
And it works just as well. The quality is just terrible. But in this album I have, it's also, again, it's a story about industry. The Scarfer, which is the name of the album, Scarfer, that's a position that was on steel mills. But before I'm not going to dig into that, find it out for yourself. But the tape is, every single one of those recordings, other than the first and the last track, are tape delays. And tape, basically, you'll hear it just fall apart. Like after a while, you hear a piano loop, and that piano loop will slowly get more and more destroyed, a lot more fumbled. They'll start to layer the pianos on top of the others, and the tape hiss will start to overwhelm the music, but it almost reaches a harmony. It reaches a harmony that is so distorted with the hiss, it almost is kind of beautiful. And I discovered this after just hooking up so many different diagrams. And it's just a fun little topic that I like to discover. And so I've really dug into hooking up reel-to-reel players with 8 tracks with cassette tapes, just going full into it. And it's been a really fun journey.
Well, that's freaking sick. So it's 7:58. My WEFT show's ending at 8 o'clock. I just wanted to yell out a couple things. International Parking Day taking place September 22nd, 2017 at the corner of Walnut and Chester out here by Cafe Kopi. And let's see, is there anything else? Well, I just wanted to say, Nick, I like you and I think you're cool because with all these different things, whether it's 8 tracks, whether it's tapes, whether it's social justice things, whether it's Detroit, you have all these things that, you know, popular sentiment is that they're garbage, is that there's no utility to them, is that they're things of the past, but you don't pay any attention with that. You seem to be able to look at anything with fresh eyes and see the value in it. And that's super cool. And I'm super stoked that you're in the community doing awesome things.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that you host a show as wonderful as this.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right. Oh, also, Racial Justice Task Force is meeting at the Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street in Urbana. They talk about really cool things like trying to take positive steps to address issues of racial disparity in the jail population as the county is actively working to try to expand the jail, which is exactly against the Racial Justice Task Force, this group that they set up to get all this data, but they're not even listening to them. It's super silly. That's my WEF show. Sync Sound System coming up next. Adrian just got in the building, so I'm going to get out of this booth and let him have it. And tune in next week. And I love you. And I'll play a little bit of music while Adrian gets in here. This is Jarring. So this is the band that Nick might be releasing a tape for soon.